Some weeks it feels like your sleep is working, and then other weeks you wake up at 3 a.m., your energy crashes halfway through the day, and everything feels harder. In this episode, I'm going to explain to you how your hormones might be playing a part in that. So let's get started.
Welcome to Chronic Illness Moms. If you're more than just a tired mom, I'm talking trying to make it through the day without crashing by noon while raising neurodivergent kids, you're not alone. I'm Ashley, a wife, mom, and certified health coach. I have lived with autoimmune disease and flare-ups that made everyday life feel harder than it should. After years of pushing through and burning out, I learned how much stress, poor sleep, and nervous system overload were driving my symptoms. Everything changed when I started building small, realistic habits that actually supported my body instead of fighting it. In this podcast, you'll learn simple habits that help you to feel better. So pop in your earbuds and take a break from the chaos. It's you time.
Friend, have you ever noticed this pattern where some weeks your routines feel like they're finally helping you to start to feel better? You're getting outside for sunlight, you're making simple meals, your stress feels like it's more manageable. Your sleep, it might not be perfect, but it feels at least somewhat stable and you feel like you're making progress. And then suddenly something shifts. You wake up in the middle of the night, you feel restless, you feel less patient, you notice your energy is crashing in the middle of the afternoon, and you start asking that question that so many of us ask, which is, why am I so tired all of the time? Part of the reason many women feel confused by this is because we were never taught about how differently our hormones compare to men's hormones. So we know that men's hormones reset on a 24-hour clock, whereas as women, we have hormones that move through a monthly cycle and our hormone levels can be changing week to week. So this can mean things like your sleep, your energy, your stress tolerance, your recovery. They can all look different depending on where you're at in your cycle. And one specific phase that tends to make sleep and energy feel much harder, especially for women dealing with things like chronic illness, fatigue, poor sleep, or high stress load at home, is in your luteal phase. So for a long time, I thought something in my routines just wasn't working. You know, there would be weeks where I would feel like things were finally improving. I was feeling like, hey, I've got a handle on this. I'm making good meals. I feel like I'm sleeping better. I feel like I'm able to kind of build that resiliency and handle stress better than I was previously. But then a week later, things would fall apart. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes I would be completely awake and couldn't fall back asleep. Or sometimes it was just like I was drifting in and out of sleep for the rest of the night. And then the next day, of course, because I hadn't slept well, I was exhausted. I was feeling horrible. My energy was crashing. And you know, especially raising kids in a neurodivergent household where there's already just a lot happening all the time, that exhaustion and the lack of sleep and all of that can really compound quickly to where you are just feeling horrible all of the time. And I used to assume that I must have missed something, that I was doing something wrong, that maybe I hadn't been managing my stress well enough, or I ate something that was causing me to feel inflamed. And then I would start thinking, okay, did I change a routine? Am I not doing enough with routines? What is going on? But eventually I discovered something that was very interesting. Those weeks that were harder showed up at the same point in my cycle every single month. And once I understood what was actually happening in my body, it helped me to kind of have that perspective to understand why I was struggling so much more during the time after I ovulated. This is something that I walk moms through with my one-on-one coaching sessions too, because many women will think that their fatigue or their symptoms or their inability to handle stress, that they're just random. But we look at the patterns and we look at what's going on in your life. What are the patterns, the consistencies that we're seeing? And when we really start to investigate, often we will realize that it's the energy and the sleep challenges, they're following a consistent pattern. And then that's where we can really dig in and figure out, okay, what do you need to do now that we understood what's going on, we've understood the cause. Now, what can we do to support your body during the different phases of your cycle? If you want to learn more about those one-on-one 1-hour coaching sessions, you can go to ashleybraden.com/coaching. Okay, so let's talk about what is happening after ovulation. So after ovulation is the second half of the menstrual cycle, and during this phase is when your progesterone levels rise. That hormonal shift really can change several things in the body that affect sleep and also your energy levels. So let's talk about a couple of those things. The first one is that your body temperature typically rises. After anyone who has ever, like if you've ever done like fertility tracking, I've shared before that, we had 5 years of infertility. So this is something I did. And if you are someone who has ever done anything like that, you know that you can tell when you have ovulated by your basal body temperature. And typically that comes because you have an increase, a sustained increase in your body temperature after ovulation. So just every single time you ovulate, when progesterone comes in, your core body temperature is going to raise just slightly. And one thing to think about is, when we talk about good sleep hygiene, we talk about making sure that you're in a cool, dark place. And to be able to sleep well, to get into that deep restorative sleep, we need to be sleeping in a cool place. So when your body has now shifted to where it's slightly warmer than what you normally are, you might notice that it's just harder for you to rest at night. You might be waking up more frequently, you might have more restless sleep, or you might feel like you never fully settled into deep sleep. I know it's so funny for me because I have even noticed for myself that there are times whenever the clothes that I want to sleep in at night prior to ovulation versus after ovulation are significantly different just because I get so much warmer at night after I have ovulated. So this is why you can often see that you are struggling more to rest, or you're waking up sweating. That's something that I've had happen before, not related to perimenopause or anything like that. It's just that hormonal shift for me. And I have had to figure out ways of making sure I'm keeping myself a little bit cooler in that phase of my cycle so that I can rest better. Okay. The second thing is that during your luteal phase, or after you have ovulated, your body is using up more energy. And when you think about it, your body is now maintaining higher levels of progesterone. It's also preparing and supporting your uterine lining in case you were to have a pregnancy. And it is also regulating your body temperature. And when you think about it, all of those processes require fuel from your body, which is why you might notice you're more fatigued. You're having stronger cravings for like carbs and sugars and things like that. And also you are having those energy dips in the afternoon. Your body is actually using more energy during your luteal phase. Okay, then the third thing is that your blood sugar can become more sensitive. So progesterone can reduce insulin sensitivity, which can lead to higher blood sugar levels. This can show up in things like stronger cravings, like I mentioned earlier, where you are noticing you're craving more sugar, more carbs, things like that. It can also be those times where you are feeling like that hypoglycemic episode where you might feel shaky if you go too long without eating, or just generally you notice you're needing to eat more frequently. It can also affect having those energy crashes as well. So then we think about the fact that we know sleep impacts our blood sugar. So if you are also not sleeping, and then that progesterone is also making you less sensitive to insulin, then just imagine how all of these things are compounding together. Then when we talk about women who are dealing with chronic symptoms, this is all just kind of snowballing. So your body is already managing things like fatigue and inflammation and not sleeping well and that chronic habitual stress. So when the sleep is disrupted in that second part of your cycle, everything else is going to be more noticeable. Those symptoms are going to become more prominent. You're going to notice you are becoming more impatient, that your energy is just not as there. Anytime I love to do like cycle planning. So what I mean by that is I plan certain tasks, especially related to my business, around my cycle. And I prefer to plan any kind of brainstorming or really coming up with ideas around the first half of my cycle, and more of that really productive those thinking tasks where I know I also need a lot of energy. I also notice it affects my exercise. I tend to want to do more heavier, intense exercise whenever I'm in the first half of my cycle compared to the last half. And so it's just very interesting the more you dig into this. And if you guys want me to do an episode on that, I might do that, where just breaking down the different things we can do and plan our schedule around our cycle. So we are kind of having to have less resistance to the activities we're doing, because we are pairing our activities with what is going on physiologically in our body at that time. But back to the topic I was originally speaking on, really what we need to think about is just remembering that during your luteal phase, during that time after you have ovulated, your body just has less margin for stress. That does not mean you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean you've completely lost all of the progress that you made previously. It just means that your body probably needs more support and a different kind of support during those certain weeks of your cycle. So in my one-on-one coaching, we talk about the Power 9, those 9 healthy foundations to help you to feel your best. And this is where I think it can become really helpful, because instead of trying to force the same task, routine, schedule every single week, instead we focus on what is going on with the body during certain times, what is going on with your life, with your schedule, everything. And then we support those systems that need it with the Power 9. So as I'm thinking about that time after you've ovulated and what's going on with the body, what are a couple of things you might do to support your body better during that time? The one thing I think about whenever it comes to my Power 9 would be rest. So protecting your sleep as much as possible. Like I said, planning for the fact that you might get warmer during that time of sleeping. How can you adapt for that? Making sure you're practicing really good sleep hygiene as well. All of those things can be really, really helpful. Another thing we would look at would be food. Again, when we know you are going to be less sensitive to insulin, then we want to make sure you are really focusing heavily on the protein, the healthy fats, to keep that blood sugar stabilized so it's not getting spiking really high, and then you're having that crash later. Another thing we know is that it is very possible you are going to have less tolerance for stressful situations. So what can we do to support your nervous system even more so during those weeks? Maybe it's slowing down, maybe it's planning less tasks, maybe it's slower evenings or that calming evening routine, something that's going to help you first and foremost to have that time to work through any stress that you have, to shut your fight or flight system out, get your body out of that fight or flight. But then also another thing is to help you to wind down to sleep, to be able to sleep better at night. We want these two things to support each other. Another thing we like to think about would be your emotions, because when you're feeling more stressed, when you have less tolerance for stress, that tends to have a side effect of feeling more guilty. You might also be less productive, which is also going to make you feel pressure, make you feel more guilt in that. And so it's learning how to sort through those emotions, but also to give yourself grace during those periods of time. And then how can you support yourself the best way possible, while obviously still getting what you need to done, but doing it in a way that does not leave you feeling pressure, like you have to push yourself to the point of exhaustion, or also that you have to just shove down your feelings and not address them or deal with them. Okay, so instead of assuming that something is wrong whenever a week feels harder, I want you to start noticing the patterns that are going on for you. So pay attention to your sleep, to your energy, to how your stress tolerance. How irritable are you? What's going on with your food? Are you noticing that you're hungry? Or are you noticing you're having certain cravings? All of those things. It might not be that there's some big catastrophic thing going on. It might just be that you need to change your approach to how you're handling your body during those certain weeks of your cycle, and really focusing more on recovery during those times in your cycle. Okay, friends, that is all for this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. I would love to hear from you if you have noticed anything, any kind of certain patterns that are going on, especially, really in any part of your cycle. I would love to hear from you. You can come over to our free Facebook group and share that with us there, or you can reach out to me on social media or email. I will have the link for all of those things down in the show notes below, and I will see you guys back next time.
Hey friend, I hope you found today's episode helpful. If you did, would you take a minute to share it with another mom who's struggling with chronic symptoms? And leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to me to know this podcast is making a difference for you. All right, it's time for me to go tackle those snack requests, and remember that a short walk, even if the kids turn it into a race, still counts as self-care. Keep chasing those little wins. Even when it feels messy, you're making progress. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. I'm not a doctor, and this podcast is not intended to treat or diagnose any condition. You're the expert on your body. Listen to it and reach out to a trusted provider for support.